Joining us now is Congressman Adam Schiff, Democrat of California, a member of the January 6th committee, as well as the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for being here tonight on a really important night for American democracy. I wonder if you think we are finally going to be able to reframe January 6th for what it was, courtesy of these guilty verdicts this evening.
I think these guilty verdicts certainly contribute to exactly that. I think that leading up to this trial, the January 6th committee also played a very important role in establishing what took place, that this was a concerted plot to interfere with the peaceful transfer of power. But tonight, a dramatic exclamation point, a big victory for the Justice Department, a big victory for justice and the American people to be convicted of using force to overthrow the government, to interfere with the lawful functions of the government, as you pointed out, is very rare. It's a very serious charge, and it will have other repercussions beyond, the public impression, and that is there, as you point out, there's another trial coming up, another couple trials, one that includes a different white nationalist violent group, and the defendants in that case may be thinking, perhaps we ought to plead guilty, considering how this trial went. So some big impacts here. There may be more people willing to cooperate in light of this jury decision.
What do you think the implications are for President Trump and his potential culpability for January 6th, given the fact that people who were in touch with his emissaries, if you will, have now been charged and found guilty of seditious conspiracy?
Well, the Justice Department went forward with this powerful case of seditious conspiracy. And it shows the department's not afraid to bring some of the most serious charges. And now they've got to look at, okay, who was involved in organizing, inciting, inspiring, giving aid and comfort to those involved in seditious conspiracy. So I think it has consequences going up the ladder of responsibility. But I also think that the former president has got to be very concerned about other statutes that apply to these offenses. Like obstructing the lawful functions of the Congress, which these defendants were also convicted of, which a California judge has already said there's evidence against the former president. Finally, these are people the president is talking about pardoning should he ever hold office again. And the idea that a president of the United States would be dining with white nationalists after this event or even before this event or at any other time, but also talking about pardoning these people who've now been convicted of conspiring to overthrow the government with force, that ought to be disqualifying for anyone, including him.
Congressman, what of the committee work in terms of January 6th? There was some suggestion today that the committee may have information they may not be aware of that could change their calculus. Do you have new information? Is there anything that emerged in all of this being the Stewart Rhodes trial for seditious conspiracy, as well as his co-defendants, that has changed your calculus or that you could foresee changing your calculus?
We have certainly learned by what the Justice Department is doing in the sense that we watch what they charge in indictments. So we watch the evidence that they present at trial. It helps inform and fill in some of the gaps in our knowledge. And I think, conversely, the hearings that we've held, the evidence that we've produced, and when we submit our report and we release transcripts and other materials, it will help further strengthen the government's case. So they've been synergistic in that respect. In terms of whether the jury verdict itself changes our thinking, I think it really doesn't change our thinking so much as, validate exactly what we've been presenting to the country, which is this wasn't some kind of spontaneous, riot getting out of control or people being swept away by emotion. No, this was a plot conducted in advance to use force to try to stop the peaceful transfer of power. And I think, this just highlights how premeditated it was. And when you add the evidence that we've submitted to the public about the president's knowledge that these people were armed and dangerous, and as he said on January 6th, he wanted the effing mags taken down because he was fine with those people marching to the Capitol with weapons because they weren't there to hurt him.
I got to ask you, because there's been some reporting about what the public is actually going to see in terms of reports from the committee when your work is done. And there's been some reporting that the focus is going to be largely on President Trump. Given what we have today with the Oath Keepers, their role in all of this, given the questions that are outstanding about the security apparatus, and we'll be talking later on the show about the Secret Service, and the sort of system-wide failures that led to January 6th, what should the public expect from the committee in terms of the totality of the findings that will be released once the work is done?
You know, our charter was a broad charter to set out the facts and circumstances that led to the violence, the reasons why the Capitol law enforcement were not better prepared for what took place, you know, who was responsible, who was culpable. And so I think our report ought to reflect what our mission was. And we also ought to be guided by, you know, the function of our committee, which is not just to inform the country, but also to prescribe remedies to protect us going forward. And that's a broad charter. So I'm certainly urging that the report be as broad as possible. And I'm sure we will reach a consensus on that. We also want to make sure that everything is documented, that everything is factual. And I think part of our success in the past has been making sure everything is nailed down, and we want to do that in the report, its appendices, and whatever accompanies it as well.
I just have one last question for you. I know that the committee was speaking with Tony Ornato, who is the head of the President's Secret Service detail, also worked as the Deputy White House Chief of Staff. He's at the center of a lot of controversy. Did you hear anything in his testimony today that conflicted with the account we got from Cassidy Hutchinson regarding the fighting over whether Secret Service would take the president back to the Capitol on January 6th?
You know, as you might imagine, I can't really go into the contents of his testimony. You know, we did interview him. It was a lengthy interview. We'll, I think, have things to say in our report about the testimony and what we find credible, what we don't find credible, and why, if we don't find certain testimony credible, we have come to that opinion. But I'm going to let the report speak for itself when that comes out. You know, again, we're also going to be discussing what kind of referrals to make. And here I don't want to suggest anything with respect to Mr. Ornato, but we're going to be reporting to the Justice Department things that we think they ought to look into potentially. And that is also a matter of our discussion. And we're going to wrap that up very soon. We hope to put our pen down, submit the report to the printers in the near future so that we can get that to the American people.
Well, the American public, including this part of the American public, greatly await that report. Congressman Adam Schiff of California and one of the January 6th and Intelligence and a member of the January 6th Committee and Intelligence Committees, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Thanks for, as always, your thoughts and wisdom, Congressman.
Thank you.